Story 1. You are more likely to die on the way to the airport than you are on the airplane. Story 2. You are more likely to be struck by lightning than to die in an airplane crash, but both are incredibly rare events. The difference is not large, but airplane crashes are rarer. Story 3. I am an airline pilot. There are many anecdotes I share, some of which have been said before. One thing I tell passengers that seems to help is that I want to get home safe to my family just as much as they do. I would not take a plane into the air if it were not safe. If problems arise, as they sometimes do, we are well trained and prepared to handle them. I will never put myself in a dangerous situation, so by default, the passengers will not be put in a bad situation either. Story 4. Commercial airliners are built with numerous safety features and redundancy, sometimes triple redundancy. Pilots spend hundreds or thousands of hours in training on how to handle problems. There are over 100,000 flights around the world each day, amounting to millions per month. Fatal accidents are extremely rare, and when one occurs, it makes news worldwide. Think of it this way. If you were to pick 1 million random flights, there is virtually a 100% chance that all of them involve safely transporting people to the ground. This is due to the many safety features, redundancies, and excellent pilot training. Story 5. If an airplane has 2 engines, it can still fly well if one is broken, such as completely on fire in midair. Story 6. In the United States, before a pilot is allowed to control an airliner, they must pass 8 tests, for written and for practical. The practical tests are designed to be very challenging, and unexpected questions are common. Story 7. I always tell myself that the pilot and flight crew felt it was safe enough to fly today, so I should feel comfortable that the professionals are on board. I always get a little nervous on takeoff and landing and have only ever felt a little turbulence before, but flying while pregnant sent me spiraling with worry for some reason, and that is what helped me feel better. Story 8. You are actually far, far safer flying in the airplane than driving or being driven to the airport. Story 9. I work in private aviation and have for almost 4 decades. Commercial aviation is incredibly safe. Aircraft have many system redundancies, making a truly dangerous situation almost a 1 in 5 million occurrence. You can rest easy. Story 10. My neighbor is a Delta Airlines pilot who cured my fear of flying like this. Picture yourself in a boat on lightly choppy water. The bumps are just how the boat moves through the waves. Air works the same way. So pretend you are in a boat and not a plane when you feel turbulence, and you will soon be able to ignore it and just watch your movie. Story 11. Did you arrive at the airport safely? Congratulations, you survived the most dangerous phase of air travel. Unless you were flying with Ryanair, then you may face difficulties. Story 12. A martini helps and is also a little trippy at that altitude. Story 13. Airplanes fly on a cushion of air like a ship floats on a cushion of water. When the sea is rough, a ship may move with the waves, but it does not suddenly fall to the bottom of the sea. Think of an airplane the same way. Most of the time, it moves smoothly through the air. Sometimes, the air has ripples and currents that may cause the plane to bump a bit, but it does not suddenly fall through the air. Even in uncommon cases of very rough air, the plane may bounce around a lot, but it is built to handle the bouncing. Keep your seatbelt fastened, and you will be fine. Story 14. Most crashes involve small private or hobby planes. Large commercial flights are much safer. Story 15. The structure is designed and tested to withstand 150% of the maximum rated gravitational force permitted. Engineering is incredible. It will not break. Story 16. The very first time you fly on a plane, you join an elite group of human beings, those who choose to fly. It is mundane today, since many people seem to hop on a plane to do relatively trivial things. Go to a wedding, take a vacation, or visit another country. All of those things happen when you fly, and it is the speed of reaching your destination that makes it feel ordinary. Yet, you are traveling fast and high. You are not just a passenger. You are part of a tiny fraction of humans who briefly transcend the earthbound existence that defined our species for millennia. Enjoy that first flight and remember how lucky you are. Story 17. Planes are safe. You will be fine. Be the calm person who remains relaxed during turbulence while others panic. You can do it. Face your fear. You will conquer it. Story 18. I do not know about comforting, but here is one for you. You are actually more likely to die from a heart attack under perfect conditions, such as standing in a hospital with doctors ready to treat you, than you are to be involved in a plane crash at all. If you are involved in a plane crash, the odds of actually dying in one are about the same as the perfect condition heart attack mentioned above. Commercial aviation is incredibly safe. Story 19. If you cannot see out a window, you might convince yourself that you are in a strange room that shudders occasionally, is loud for a few hours, and then magically transports you to another place. Story 20. I was on a flight I was certain was going to crash. I had no fear, just thoughts of my life. Even if it gets really bad, it is not as scary as you might think. Story 21. Equate a little turbulence to a ride on Indiana Jones at Disneyland. Story 22. Every airplane that has ever flown in the history of the world has always returned to the ground. Story 23. You cannot go down because of turbulence, as physics does not allow it. While moving forward, there is still lift. Story 24. Pilots and crew utilize checklists every flight, whether it is their first or 5,000th flight. They do not get to be complacent or careless. Hospitals have implemented similar checklists and found significant reductions in mortality rates and human errors. The people in charge of your aircraft have written the book on process and procedure and how it saves lives. Story 25. When you are flying, you are riding on the fluid of air, just like a ship rides on the fluid of water. The path of that air speeding over the aerodynamically shaped wing creates a considerable upward force. Barring a rare malfunction, you will not just fall out of the sky. This has all been worked out, so sit back and enjoy the flight. Story 26. Airplanes fly because of the laws of physics, not in spite of them. Story 27. If you are anxious, that is not unusual. If you are scared, talk to your doctor. They may be able to offer medication to help. If medication is not absolutely necessary, then just remember that people fly with no harm every day. It is statistically safer than any other form of transportation. Story 28. The most dangerous part of flying is the drive to the airport. Story 29. All the information you are hearing in the news about airline incidents is exaggerated. The number of incidents is lower, but it seems high because everything is now reported in the media, which was not the case before the fatal accident in Washington, D.C. Story 30. When we hit turbulence, I just close my eyes and imagine I'm in a bus on a rough road. I fall asleep pretty quickly after that. It's actually a good comparison, as turbulence is like having a bad road. The plane isn't shaking from cracks and rocks but from air pockets. Also, planes don't crash mid-air. They can fly and land without an engine. From the very small number of commercial airplane crashes that have happened, the majority occurred in the first 3 and last 3 minutes, leaving the airport and landing, so I limit my stress to those 6 minutes. Many people actually survive plane crashes. They just don't get away from the plane fast enough before it catches fire. You have around 3 minutes maximum to be at least 100 meters from the plane, so instead of worrying, try preparing for this unlikely scenario to have some control over it. This helps me. My husband says I'm a psychopath for that, but for me, it makes me feel like I have some control over it. Story 31. While uncomfortable, the only danger in turbulence is not being buckled in. Story 32. You are literally at more risk getting to the airport. The flight is the safest part of your travels. Story 33. You can be struck by lightning and still be okay. It is a super loud experience that I do not recommend. Story 34. I recently learned that people who are afraid of turbulence are afraid the plane will fall out of the sky. When you are moving quickly through air, the air is like water. You are like a boat cutting through water. You are not afraid the boat will fall to the bottom of the lake if there are waves in the water. The plane will not fall out of the sky because the air is bumpy. Story 35. The most dangerous part of a flight is on the runway. When you are up in the air, you can relax. Story 36. This is not for everyone, but after experiencing a flight that lost cabin pressure as a teenager flying alone in the 1990s and having to wear the oxygen mask while thinking the plane was going down, I became, and continue to be to this day, obsessed with any form of air disaster documentary media. It has unexpectedly cured my nervousness about flying. The extent they go to discover the root cause of any mishap and ensure it does not happen again is absolutely mind-blowing and strangely comforting. Story 37. A flight may be special and scary to you, but the flight attendants and pilots have been taking several flights a day for decades. You know for a fact they are much better informed on the risks of flight than you, and they are still trusting the safety of the plane. They are not just crossing their fingers every day. They are planning for retirement. Story 38. You're at the airport, yes? If so, the dangerous part of your journey is over. From now on, you are safer than you would be traveling by almost any other method. Safer than cars, trains, taxis, boats, or horses. You faced more risk getting to the airport than you will on any plane. Safe travels. Story 39. The fact that you either do know or can know about every single plane accident that has ever happened in the world because it was covered in the news should tell you how rare these incidents are. However, a discomforting fact about air travel is that even though newly designed planes are bigger than ever, their seats and legroom keep getting smaller. That is not comfortable at all. Story 40. Other high-hazard industries like nuclear power, chemical processing plants, and medicine, including operating rooms and emergency response, study the aviation industry's safety record and try to mimic their safety technologies because they are very effective. Story 41. Well, they would not want to hear, "I hate these snakes on my plane." Story 42. Not trying to be glib, but the fact that worrying about it will not do anything at all truly lets me not worry about it at all. Story 43. Not a fact, but my grandfather was an airline executive and my father flew 3 to 4 times a week throughout my entire childhood. Over both of their lifespans, from the 1930s to now, they have only been on one faulty plane combined. My parents' honeymoon trip where they evacuated onto the tarmac after a hazard warning. Story 44. Drastically, you would have to fly every day for 2,400 years to have a chance of ending up in a plane crash. Even then, 90% of crashes are minor and have no casualties. This applies worldwide. If you are flying in a wealthy country with stringent standards such as Australia, the United States of America, the European Union, Canada, or Japan, the odds are closer to 0. Story 45. You have a higher chance of dying before reaching the airport and after leaving the destination airport. Story 46. Plane crashes are usually due to human error, not the aircraft. If a plane breaks apart at high altitude and people are ejected into freefall, they are initially unconscious due to lack of oxygen but most likely regain consciousness during the fall before hitting the ground. Story 47. Do not watch any movies about air travel leading up to your trip. Be 98% packed and double-check using a list. The remaining 2% is for last-minute items you use for sleep or in your morning routine. Get a good night's sleep. Dress comfortably. Think your favorite hoodie and a pair of comfortable pants. Give yourself extra time to get to the airport and through security. Be prepared for the trip not to go according to plan. Roll with the punches. Delays are normal and unpleasant. Visualize the perfect day of travel, but be realistic that unexpected issues happen, and 99% of the time they are out of your control. Bring earbuds and chewing gum and have them accessible. Download some of your favorite chill music or shows. Bring books, magazines, or other tactile items as they can be helpful. Bring snacks. Airport prices are higher than concert prices. These things will help you stay calm in the moment and reduce your anxiety. Jitters are still normal for most people if they are being honest. It is okay to be scared, but do not let that stop you. Smooth travels. Story 48. There are backups for the backups in many systems. The most reliable mechanical system you can ride on. Story 49. The airplane wants to fly. Even if you lose engines for a short time, the airplane is designed to glide. Physics does not allow it to drop out of the sky like a stone. Story 50. None. Leave them be. Any fact that you give them to try to reassure them will no doubt include the word crash. This will not calm them down but will most likely make them think about plane crashes. Story 51. There are emergency guides in the seat pocket in front of you. Reading them before the flight can help you prepare in case of an emergency. The guides are located next to the drink menu. Story 52. Do the cup trick. Fill a small cup of water and place it on the dashboard of a slow-moving car traveling over the smoothest possible road. The water will spill in seconds. Now, put a small cup of water on your tray table during severe turbulence. The cup will typically slosh around but not spill. This gives a great perspective on danger. Story 53. It's green noise, and if you can get into it, you'll fall asleep. I also recommend the window seat so you can observe the beauty below. I'd be the last to board and the last to deplane. Dress in layers so you can shed clothes. Wear comfortable shoes and socks. Use earplugs if you are seated next to children. Air travel is the safest way to travel. Story 54. I used to be very scared of flying. My father died in a plane crash when he was in the United States Air Force. I was once told to think about flying like you are on an amusement park ride. It can be scary, but it is just a ride and you are safe. I have never had to drink alcohol before flying again. Story 55. A random Midwestern father and engineer talked extensively about his experience in flight school before switching to engineering. He described how incredibly flexible yet sturdy airplane wings are. Also, my husband describes turbulence as bobbing along the waves of the ocean, which is much more comforting. Story 56. Airline travel is continually getting safer. For decades, nearly every time something has gone wrong on a commercial flight, there has been an investigation to determine not just fault but how to mitigate or avoid that same problem from happening again in the future. The industry, by and large, makes the necessary changes. If only this was done for automobile accidents. Story 57. In the end, what you are doing is pretty much sitting down in one place for a couple of hours and then getting off at another location. More intelligent and better trained professionals and machines are controlling the airplane, managing the crowd, or planning the flight routes. Just leave it to them. Story 58. Look at the flight attendants. If they do not look worried, you can relax. Story 59. The drive there is more dangerous than the flight. For real, commercial air travel is much safer than automobile travel. Story 60. Former flight attendant. I used to tell people that there is turbulence on every single flight. It is just a matter of how much, but it is a completely normal part of flying and nothing to be afraid of. Story 61. Statistically speaking, flying is still the safest form of travel. Story 62. I was scared the first time I flew alone on an airplane. I was afraid the plane might crash, but it did not. The ride was a little shaky, but once you are up there, it is fine. It definitely feels a little unusual. If you sit next to the window on your first few flights, I recommend keeping the window shade closed unless you want to open it. I just listened to music and watched videos. Story 63. I have been living next to a medium-sized airport for over 12 years. During the time I have been here, no plane departing from this airport has crashed. It is really comforting to think about this. The last incident occurred in 2007, and no one was injured. Story 64. You are safer in an airplane than you were in the car driving to the airport. Story 65. I have been on several hundred flights over the course of my life. I travel for work monthly. I was an Air Force crew chief for nearly 13 years. I even had a brief stint working as a baggage handler for United Airlines. I have lived and breathed airplanes for as long as I can remember. I have had a handful of scary incidents but never experienced or saw an outright crash. The three that stick out most in my mind are when a boom ripped off of a McDonnell Douglas KC-10 extender, when an engine exploded in flight, again KC-10, though no news article because it happened on a deployment, and then a large bird strike that mangled a Boeing 757 engine while I worked at United. All three events, despite severe damage, resulted in the jet making it back to the ground without any significant follow-on incidents. Both of those KC-10 extenders were built in the late 1970s and, prior to being retired just last year, were effectively obsolete relics compared to modern airliners. The Boeing 757 was built somewhere in the late 1980s to early 1990s and again is a total relic compared to today's jets. All that to say this, it is notoriously difficult to outright cause a crash on an airplane. They have many redundancies and backups, especially now, so even if something as severe as an engine blowing up mid-flight occurs, there is still a very good chance that the jet can land safely. Modern engines are strong enough that an airliner is, under proper conditions, capable of taking off on just one engine alone. Not to say problems cannot happen. There have certainly been more than a couple of major incidents making the news lately, but compare even those events to how many airplanes fly daily all around the world. Literally tens of thousands of flights at all hours of every day. Even then, those events are usually one-off, 1 in a billion odds of happening. So take it from someone who has been around that world a while. Flying is safe. Even if something does happen, the odds of it becoming catastrophic to the point of causing a crash are astronomically low. Story 66. The pilots want to go home or to the hotel at the end of the flight as well. Getting from point A to point B safely without doing any extra paperwork or filing reports with the company or Federal Aviation Administration is their one and only priority. Story 67. You know when you are in a fast-moving car and you put your hand out the window, and the air feels kind of thick like it can force your hand around? At the speeds airplanes fly, the water vapor is almost like a heavy liquid. There is so much lift on those wings. Story 68. Pull up a flight tracker map such as Flight Radar 24 or similar services and observe the number of aircraft airborne at any moment, going about their routine all day, every day. Story 69. If someone releases a deadly odor, the air will circulate it out faster than you realize. Story 70. It will be over soon. Unlike a car ride that takes forever and does not come with a toilet and snacks served with a smile. Story 71. If nothing else, just know that a Boeing 747 costs about $500 million once it is ready to fly. If something goes drastically wrong, that is a $500 million loss to the airline, plus the cost of lost revenue from having a plane out of service, and the cost of a new one. Even if an airline executive could accept that a plane crashed on their watch, the economic impact to the company would put their bonus in danger, which is unthinkable. So do not think like you are flying in a plane. Think that you are flying an executive's new yacht, and they do not want to give it up. Story 72. Every time I open the Flight Radar 24 application to track a plane I hear or see, I am absolutely astounded at the number of planes flying around the planet at any given time. Every day, at all hours of the day, thousands of planes are always in the air. For example, during an average midday peak, there are approximately 16,000 to 17,000 planes aloft at the same time. You are in good company. It is not like flying to a different planet. In fact, you will be surprised how normal and routine it all is. Story 73. It always reassures me that traveling by car is much more dangerous than traveling on a commercial airplane because I happily jump in my car every day to go to work, the gym, or shops without a care in the world. Story 74. If you sit in the middle, you will not feel the takeoff or the landing as strongly as the people in the front and back. If you are scared of roller coasters, the front will not feel as fast, and the drops and turns will not feel as scary because of the weight it is pulling. Story 75. These people do not want facts. If facts worked, they would not be scared. Story 76. Yesterday, Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer calculated the odds of a fatal accident for me. By plane, it was about half as dangerous as traveling by train, which is already pretty safe. Traveling by car was about 50 times more dangerous than flying. You would have to take one flight per day for 5,000 years until you were on a flight that crashed. I said, okay, after 5,000 years of flying nonstop, I guess my time has come. Story 77. You are much more likely to die from a virus you catch on the airplane than in a crash. Story 78. Just commit fully. The second you step on that plane, you accept that maybe it will go down, and there is literally nothing you can do to stop it. Accept the inherent risk, accept that there will be nothing you can do, and worrying now will not make a difference. Then kick back and relax while you find out if today is the day. I have never seen a large group of people confronting their immediate and inescapable death. Not many in life do. So at least that is something rare and interesting that can come out of it. It will not last long, but that is life. Story 79. If you are nervous, look at the flight attendants. They do this all day, every day. If they are not scared, you do not have anything to be scared of. Story 80. The chances of being on a plane at the same time as someone with a bomb are already very small. The chance of being on a plane at the same time as two people with a bomb is nearly zero. The takeaway is, always travel safely and follow security guidelines. Story 81. I have flown approximately 7 or 8 times, and not once did I experience any fatal incident. Story 82. It is objectively the safest way to travel. Also, if you do not like heights, try to book an aisle seat instead of a window seat. Story 83. If you are flying on jets or other large airplanes, the chances of any kind of emergency or crash are exponentially smaller than the chances of a similar emergency or crash happening while driving or riding in a car. Story 84. I work at the busiest airport in the world. When you work at any airport, you truly see how routine and safe flying is. Planes take off and land one after another without any issues 99% of the time. Even the rare 1% when there is an issue typically results in a safe landing. Story 85. You could be hit by a bus tomorrow or choke on a bit of food. So go travel and see the world. Story 86. As someone at an international airport responsible for airport safety, you should know that commercial airlines have made emergency landings for mechanical failures less than 5 times in the 4 years I have been doing this. They all landed safely out of an abundance of caution, and no one was injured. Story 87. Turbulence feels scary, but to the pilots, it is just like driving over a bumpy road. The airplane is built for it. Story 88. Seeing the wings flex due to turbulence or strong winds is a good thing. If they were not flexible, the wings could snap off the fuselage, and you would be falling 30,000 feet to your death. Story 89. Passenger airline crashes are so rare that each one makes international news for days, if not weeks. If you were to make a 1-minute news segment for each fatal car crash on Earth, you would need a dedicated 24/7 channel for it, and you would not be able to cover them all. Passenger aircraft are incredibly safe. Story 90. If your airplane stalls and enters an unrecoverable spin, there is a good chance you will lose consciousness from a panic attack before impact. Do not worry too much. One way or another, you will make it back to the ground. Story 91. There are people with carts who bring food and drinks directly to your seat. Story 92. I look around at the flight attendants and realize they do this all the time, multiple times a week, and never worry. The pilots have tens of thousands of flying hours, with usually nothing unusual happening. Flying is just mundane and ordinary. Story 93. What helps me is that every time there is an incident, not even a crash, an investigation is conducted. These investigations are serious and incredibly in-depth. If there is an accident, the organizations involved gather every single piece of information they can and issue changes and rules based on them. For every single plane crash in the last 70 years, there is information on how it happened, why it happened, how it could have been prevented, and this information shapes the rules that govern today's air travel. Every single incident in the past has made today's air travel safer and safer, to the point that if you flew 5 flights per day for 50 years straight, your chance of being in a deadly crash would still be less than 1%. Story 94. Flying a commercial airliner in a developed country, especially the United States, Canada, almost all of Europe, Japan, Australia, is not just safe. That is not the right word for it. It is one of the safest, if not the safest, things you do in your life. Eating fish is more dangerous. Taking a shower is more dangerous. Driving is exponentially more dangerous, as is walking down the street or going to work. There is almost nothing in your life that is safer than sitting on an airliner at 36,000 feet going 500 miles per hour. Story 95. Turbulence feels scary, but it is just like bumps on the road. Annoying, not dangerous. Story 96. My girlfriend is a nervous flyer and this has helped her a bit. There are over 100,000 commercial flights every day. If 99.999% of all flights arrived safely, there would be a commercial plane crash every single day. Flying is one of the safest things you can do. Every aspect of a plane's design and operation is geared towards safety. Story 97. Statistics say that airplanes are the safest mode of transport. Also, you would have to fly daily for 10,000 years to be involved in a plane crash. Story 98. Roughly 100,000 flights take off and land every day around the world. Story 99. You are thousands of times more likely to be injured driving to the airport than flying in an airplane. Story 100. What helped me immensely, from an old coworker who works on the planes themselves. Takeoff is absolutely the scariest part of a flight. It never gets worse than that. Once you are in the air, it is incredibly less scary. Get past takeoff and you will be absolutely fine. As a former ground crew person who also cleaned planes, I can also say there are many checks and balances that pilots and ground crew go through before the plane is even allowed on the runway, and more checks mostly by the pilot but also air traffic control before the plane is allowed in the air. There are so many redundant safety checks, and many people have to sign off before a plane can fly. Having that behind-the-scenes look really helped me overcome my fear. Also, it gets way easier the second time. The first time, I was scared of takeoff. The second time, I knew what to expect, and it was only a mild discomfort. To put that into perspective, I hate the feeling of roller coasters. Story 101. We are more likely to feel uncomfortable from sitting too long and become irritated with our fellow passengers than anything else we are worried about. Story 102. If you like pretzels, you are in luck because you will be offered a small bag containing as many as 3 mini pretzels. If you do not like pretzels, you are in luck because you will be offered a small bag containing no more than 3 tiny pretzels. Story 103. If something goes wrong, death would come rather quickly. Story 104. Really, nothing to worry about, Mary. Statistically, they say you are more likely to get killed on the way to the airport. Story 105. It is not worth worrying about because some people are prone to plane crashes. It is unavoidable that when they get on a plane, there could be a collision or catastrophic engine failure resulting in a terrifying drop from the sky and sudden impact that may end their life or almost certainly cripple them. Story 106. The pilots are highly certified and experienced in flying aircraft. Having done this thousands of times throughout their careers, they undergo extensive training and accumulate many hours flying a plane before they are hired to operate one. They often have a co-pilot to ensure the aircraft continues to operate even if the pilot is incapacitated or needs to take a break. Essentially, they operate planes like professional drivers operate cars. However, if it is not a major airline that you are flying with, then I have no information. Story 107. Just remember that the airplane you are about to board is made of millions of parts, all manufactured by the lowest bidder. Story 108. The safest place to be is inside the vehicle unless you crash. Then you all die, unfortunately. Story 109. There is a minimal chance at most that the wings will fall off, so do not worry. Story 110. Do not watch the show Air Disasters on Discovery Channel before a flight. Story 111. Descending 15,000 feet in about 1 minute due to turbulence. Story 112. If there is a problem with the engines during the flight, they will still take you to the scene of the crash. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.